But if you want to know what's really driving this, there's two things. It's called the clock and the calendar. The clock and the calendar. Most people in life, if you want to know what they truly value, you look at their checkbook and their calendar. You know what they value. That's what this committee values. Time. They want to do it before the end of the year. Why? Because the chairman said it just a second ago. Because we're scared of the elections next year.
That was the Judiciary Committee's top Republican, Doug Collins, today, arguing Democrats are using the impeachment inquiry to meet a political timeline. House leadership has signaled they would like to wrap up proceedings by the end of the year. That would most likely mean we could expect a Senate trial in January. However, a firm timeline has not been established just yet. Today's hearing was an important step toward reaching that potential deadline, though. Here's House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler earlier defending his party against the criticism it's moving too fast.
We are all aware that the next election is looming, but we cannot wait for the election to address the present crisis. The integrity of that election is one of the very things at stake.
Rebecca Roiphe is back with us. She's a CBSN legal contributor and former assistant district attorney in the New York County DA's office. Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for being with us. So if Democrats stick to this prescribed timeline, what exactly needs to happen before the end of the year?
Right. So the Judiciary Committee needs to meet as a whole and vote first on whether impeachment is warranted. So that's a simple majority that votes on that. And then if that passes, which I imagine it would because there's certainly enough Democrats to vote for that, then they have to draft the articles of impeachment, at which point they would vote on the articles of impeachment, each one, and then it would go on to the full House.
Is that process likely to take a while, though?
You know, it could, or it could be fairly quick. I mean, it depends on how much controversy, how much disagreement. You know, I think it was relatively short, if I remember, in the Bill Clinton impeachment proceedings. So it can be done fairly quickly.
So if things go the way they look like they're going, there probably will end up being a vote in the Senate, right, as to whether or not to support impeachment.
A vote in the House.
Well, a vote in the House, but I'm saying it looks likely that the House will vote to impeach and then it will go to the Senate. So here's what Majority Leader Mitch McConnell told reporters about how his chamber will handle the proceedings. Let's listen.
Obviously, the first thing Senator Schumer and I will do is see if there's a possibility of an agreement on procedure. That failing, I would probably come back to my own members and say, okay, can 51 of us agree how we're going to handle this?
So what are the constitutional and legal expectations if articles of impeachment are voted on and accepted at the House once it goes to the Senate?
Right. So there are already rules in place, and those rules will govern unless the Senate replaces those rules with new rules. They can establish new policies in addition to those rules by a simple majority. In order to change a rule or get rid of a standing rule, they need 67 votes. So they need a supermajority in order to do that. So that all depends on how this goes down. Another key thing, though, that to think about is there's also Chief Justice Roberts. So how active is Chief Justice Roberts going to be in this procedure? Because certainly we know what McConnell is going to want to do.
The Chief Justice, however, is just presiding, but has no vote, correct?
No, he has no vote, but he can control, he can suggest control rules. Okay. And he can rule on evidence, but then the Senate, it's ultimately the Senate's show. So the Senate can reject his suggestions. So he has a say, and it's not the final say, but he has a say in the way that things work within the Senate. So
it's so interesting because it's really not a typical legal process.
No.
It's still a political process, even when it moves to the Senate.
I mean, it's a hybrid legal political process.
You said there are rules, but the rules can be changed.
Right. The rules can be changed, and the rules can be changed by the Senate itself. So it's the Senate's show. And that's because, you know, as the witnesses said today repeatedly, the Constitution gives impeachment to the legislative branch, and the legislative branch controls it. The House controls the first impeachment process, and then the Senate controls the trial.
Right. Okay. Of course, we know that the report that came out yesterday from the House Intelligence Committee was crucial to today's hearing. I want to play a little bit of how Democratic Senator Chris Coons reacted. Let's listen.
There's more striking evidence that's come out yesterday that suggests that Rudy Giuliani, President Trump's personal attorney, was engaged in many matters, not just a side or competitive diplomatic effort with Ukraine that was designed to serve President Trump's interests, but directly communicating into the Office of Management and Budget, an office he would have no legitimate reason to be in contact with.
So when we're discussing next steps, Rebecca, should we assume or presume that Rudy Giuliani may be involved in what they're in what this, in what these lawmakers are investigating?
These phone calls are quite interesting. I mean, as Kuhn said, what legitimate interest would either the president's personal attorney or an attorney for any of these private individuals or an individual with business interests in Ukraine have communicating with the Office of Management and Budget? The Office of Management and Budget is in control of that military aid.
Right.
So, yeah. I mean, maybe there's some other purpose. It's hard for me to imagine what it would be.
Is there an offshoot investigation that could be going on at the same time?
Well, the Southern District of New York is already investigating the two other individuals, Parnas and Fruman, who were involved in the Ukraine dealings with.
But as of now, not Rudy Giuliani?
Well, we don't know.
Right.
I mean, I assume they are investigating. I assume they are investigating Rudy Giuliani. I mean, Rudy Giuliani's activities are so closely entwined with those two individuals that I don't see how the Southern District of New York could not be looking at that. I mean, that's how an investigation proceeds. So I would assume definitely. And the question is, do they find criminal activity? If they find criminal activity, do they bring an indictment against Rudy Giuliani? And if they bring an indictment against Rudy Giuliani, what conduct? And if it is for some kind of conduct that the president is involved in, is he a named co-conspirator or not?
Certainly getting thornier, isn't it?
Right, it totally is. And then does the White House try to distance itself from Rudy Giuliani, or does it defend Rudy Giuliani and say none of this, the Southern District of New York is part of this Democratic conspiracy? I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, Rebecca Roiphe, thank you so much once again for joining us.